The clink of champagne flutes sounded like a tiny, ironic alarm bell in my ear. Across the linen-draped table at Per Se, my husband of 10 years, David Wright, reached for my hand. His smile was the same one that had charmed me across a crowded Columbia Law Library a lifetime ago, that all-even, white teeth and crinkles at the corners of his ocean blue eyes. To the most beautiful woman in any room, and the only reason any of this, he gestured vaguely, a sweep that encompassed the hushed, luxurious restaurant, his custom Tom Ford suit. Our entire life means a damn thing. I smiled. The practiced, warm curve of lips I'd perfected for gallery openings and charity galas. To us, David, 10 years. I took a sip, the bubbles sharp on my tongue. 10 years, the thought carried weight. A solid, substantial thing. Most of it good. Weren't they? I have something for you, he said, his voice dropping into that intimate register meant only for me. He produced a slim, black velvet box, not from a jeweler I recognized. It looked old, the velvet slightly worn at the hinges. David, the dinner was more than enough. I protested softly, but my heart gave a little flutter. He'd been secretive all week, taking mysterious calls in his study, mentioning a legacy piece he was having restored. Nothing is ever enough for you. Hannah, he pushed the box toward me. Open it. The table of mergers acquisitions lawyers from his office, seated nearby, had quieted, watching with indulgent grins. I felt the familiar, faint pressure of being on display, the perfect wife, receiving the perfect gift. I lifted the lid. Nestled on the faded ivory silk was a necklace. It wasn't the blinding, modern sparkle of a Fifth Avenue purchase. This was different. A platinum chain, delicate but strong, led to a pendant about the size of my thumbnail. A single, old European-cut diamond, maybe 2 carats, was held in an intricate, mill-grain-edged setting of white gold, surrounded by a filigree pattern of swirling, almost Art Nouveau leaves and tiny, seed pearl accents. It was stunning in a ghostly, timeless way. David, it's exquisite. It's called Midnight Star, he said, taking it from the box. The diamond caught the candlelight, throwing fractured rainbows on the tablecloth. It was my mother's, the only thing of hers I kept after she passed. I've been having it completely restored for the past 6 months. Had to find a true artist to work on it. I wanted you to have it tonight. His voice thickened, just the right amount. To have a piece of my family with you. Always. The table of colleagues made soft. Appreciative sounds. A legacy piece. Dave, that's the real deal, said Mark. Hiseo, only the best for my girl. David said, his eyes glistening. Turn around. Sweetheart. I lifted my hair, feeling the cool metal brush my neck. The faint click of the clasp. The pendant settled just above the neckline of my navy silk dress. It felt heavier than it looked. It's perfect on you, David murmured, his hands resting on my shoulders for a moment too long, like it was made for you. The rest of the dinner was a blur of rich food, expensive wine, and laughter that felt a bit too loud. I kept touching the pendant, the metal warming against my skin. His mother's, Eleanor Wright, had died of a rapid, aggressive cancer when David was in college. He rarely spoke of her. The gesture felt profound, a deep vulnerability, a tiny, cold knot of guilt formed in my stomach. Had I been too distant lately, too wrapped up in planning Liam's summer camp and the renovation of the Hamptons house? This gift felt like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. Later, in the silent, cavernous marble bathroom of our Tribeca penthouse, I finally examined it closely. David was already asleep, exhausted from the wine and the performance of being the doting husband. The diamond glittered wickedly under the vanity lights. I fumbled with the clasp, my fingers slick from the steam of the shower I was about to take. The mechanism was an old barrel clasp, intricate and stiff. As I finally got it open, the necklace slithered through my fingers. I grabbed for it, but the chain caught on the edge of the vanity. There was a tiny, sharp ping. The necklace fell into the white porcelain sink. The pendant itself was fine, but the delicate safety chain had snapped near the clasp. I sighed, annoyed. I'd have to get it fixed. David would be disappointed if I didn't wear it tomorrow for the casual brunch with friends he'd planned. Holding it up, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. On the inside curve of the pendant's setting, where it would rest against my skin, was a series of tiny, precise scratches, not random wear. They looked almost like markings. I squinted. It was hard to make out. Maybe M+D? Or just a flaw in the metal. The steam from my shower fogged the mirror, obscuring the view. I shook my head. Old jewelry told stories. These were just the scars of its history. I placed the broken necklace carefully on a hand towel. I'd take it to Elias tomorrow. Elias Berkowitz was a third-generation jewelry craftsman with a tiny, unassuming workshop in the Diamond District. My grandmother had sworn by him. He'd fixed the antique sapphire bracelet David had given me for our 5th anniversary after Liam. In a toddler's fury, had hurled it across the kitchen. He was discreet, brilliant, and didn't charge a fortune. Sleep was elusive. The diamond pendant, now lying inert on my nightstand, seemed to pulse with a faint, cold light of its own in the dark. The next morning, over coffee, I showed David the broken chain. "Oh, Hannah." "No," he said, genuine dismay on his face. He took it from me, his fingers gentle. "That damn old clasp. I should have had it replaced." "I'm so sorry. It's just the safety chain." I said, "I'm going to take it to Elias today. He'll have it fixed in an hour." A shadow passed behind his eyes. A flicker. There and gone. "Elias? On 47th Street? Are you sure?" "I know a fantastic place in the Waldorf. They did the restoration initially. They'd do it for free. Elias is fine. David. He's a magician, and he knows all my other pieces. He'll match the work." I kissed his cheek, tasting coffee and his citrus cologne. "Don't worry. I'll be careful with your mother's treasure." He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Okay, just be careful with it. It's irreplaceable." Elias's workshop was a cave of wonders, smelling of metal polish, old wood, and dust. Glass cases held incredible pieces, and the walls were lined with hundreds of tiny wooden drawers. Elias himself, a small man with a magnifying loupe permanently perched on his forehead like a jeweler's crown, took the necklace with the reverence of a priest handling a relic. "Ah, the midnight star," he said, his voice a soft, Eastern European rumble. "A beautiful piece, a tragic history." I blinked. "You know it." "I know of it. The Wright family piece. Not seen it in 20 years. More?" He peered at it through his loupe, turning it slowly under the bright halogen light. He hummed, a non-committal sound. He examined the broken safety chain, clucking his tongue. Simple, a 5-minute solder. But he didn't move to fix it. His attention was riveted on the pendant itself. He turned it over, studying the back, the filigree, the setting of the diamond. "The restoration work is recent," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "Very fine. Too fine." He picked up a different, more powerful eyepiece, swapping it for his loupe. He leaned in, his nose almost touching the metal. The humming stopped. The relaxed slope of his shoulders stiffened. "Mr. Berkowitz? Is everything okay?" He didn't answer for a full minute. The only sound was the faint hiss of a solder iron from the back room. When he looked up, his face, normally a warm, weathered brown, had gone ashen. He carefully, so carefully, set the necklace down on the black velvet pad. He looked at me, then at the empty front of the shop. He gestured me closer. A prickle of unease, cold and sharp, traveled down my spine. I leaned in. His breath smelled of mint and old tea. His voice was the barest whisper, a dry leaf scraping on stone. But each word was drilled into my ear with horrific clarity. "Mrs. Wright, this pendant, it has been modified. The filigree, it is not just decorative. There is a cavity, a very clever, very small cavity between the outer gold and the inner setting. He swallowed, his atoms apple bobbing. When I use the spectroscope, I see traces, lead lining, and behind it, polonium-210, microscopic particles, sealed in. It is a sophisticated method. The words meant nothing, and everything. Polonium? What is that? A new type of enamel? His eyes, magnified grotesquely by the lens, were wide with a fear that was instantly contagious. No, Mrs. Wright, it is not for jewelry. It is an alpha emitter, radioactive, very, very toxic. A few specks, a dust it is enough. It has no smell, no taste. If the seal is compromised, it gets on the skin. It is inhaled, it goes inside. His voice dropped even lower. It makes you sick. Slowly, the hair falls out. The bones ache. The organs, they fail. Doctors, they look for cancer, for rare diseases. They almost never find this. It is a ghost that kills. The world did not tilt. It froze. The hiss of the solder iron became a scream. The sparkle of the diamonds in the case became malevolent. Icy stars. I heard my own voice, impossibly calm, as if from the end of a long tunnel. Why? Why would anyone? Elias's gaze was unbearable in its pity. I have heard stories, only stories, from the old country, from bad times. It is for when someone needs to die, and no one must know why. He pushed the velvet pad with the necklace away from him, as if it were a live viper. You wear this against your skin, every day, in the shower, the heat, the moisture, even the best seal can weaken. A tiny flaw. He shook his head, his expression grave. Who gave you this? The ice in my veins turned to fire, then back to ice, harder and sharper. David, his mother's, a legacy. I wanted you to have a piece of my family with you. Always the dinner, the toast, the watching colleagues, the perfect gift, the weight of it on my neck. How long? My lips were numb. How long to work? Weeks, months. The symptoms, they look like many things. Fatigue, a flu that does not go away. By the time they look in the right direction, it is too late. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the verdict. You must not take this back. You must go to the authorities. The authorities, the police. I pictured myself, Hannah Wright, socialite, wife of rising finance star David Wright, walking into a precinct and saying my husband gave me a radioactive necklace. They'd smile politely. They'd call David, David, with his easy charm, his connections. He'd be horrified, concerned. My poor, stressed wife, the pressure of the charity board. Perhaps a misunderstanding with the jeweler. Let's get you to Dr. Evans. Darling, a full checkup, and I would disappear into a diagnosis of stress-induced psychosis or, worse, the slow, wasting death Elias had just described. No, I said, the word cracking out of me. I reached out, took the necklace. Elias flinched. You will fix the safety chain. Now, exactly as it was. And you will tell no one. No one, Dio, you understand? Mrs. Wright, you cannot. Fix it. The voice that came out of me was not my own. It was cold, flat, final. Take the payment from my card on file. And forget I was here today. Forget what you saw. He stared at me, conflict warring on his face. Fear won. He nodded. Once. Sharply. He took the necklace with tweezers, placed it in a small, lead-lined box he retrieved from a drawer. He had a lead-lined box ready, and carried it to his bench. His hands trembled slightly as he soldered the tiny link. 5 minutes. He returned it to me, the chain repaired, the pendant innocently beautiful. He placed it in a standard velvet pouch, handling it with tweezers until the last second. Thank you, Elias, I said, my social smile automatic. Ghastly, lovely as always. I walked out of the shop, the small pouch burning a hole in my purse. I walked 2 blocks, my legs moving on autopilot, Before I ducked into a Starbucks bathroom, I locked the door, slumped against it, and fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. My fingers, slick with cold sweat, typed into the search bar, polonium 210. The results loaded. Wikipedia, scientific journals, news articles, highly radioactive, extraordinarily toxic, alpha emitter, cannot penetrate skin, but lethal if ingested or inhaled. 1 gram could theoretically sicken tens of millions. Used in the assassination of former KGB officer Alexander Litvinenko in 2006. Symptoms mimic acute radiation syndrome or other illnesses difficult to detect. No known antidote. I scrolled, my heart hammering against my ribs. A news article from a tabloid. Heartbreak as heiress dies of mystery illness. Was it polonium poisoning? Another. The perfect poison. Why spies and husbands love polonium. Husbands. The word swam in my vision. I thought of the last 6 months. My unusual fatigue, which I'd blamed on chasing after an energetic 8-year-old and board meetings. The occasional nausea. The handful of extra hairs on my brush. All small things. Easily explained. All possible early symptoms. I thought of David, urging me to see his fancy. New personal physician, Dr. Evans, for a comprehensive wellness workup. Just to be safe. Honey, you've been looking pale. I thought of him, just last week, gently clasping this necklace around my neck, his fingers brushing my skin. A dry, hacking sob tore from my throat. I choked it back, pressing my fist against my mouth. No, not now. Think. I had to get out. I had to get Liam. I splashed cold water on my face, watching the pale, terrified woman in the mirror. Hannah Wright. I told her, "You are not a victim." Not yet. I left the bathroom, a woman on a mission, at a corner pharmacy. I bought a cheap, prepaid phone with cash. At a hardware store, I bought a small, heavy-gauge metal lockbox. I drove to a quiet spot by the Hudson, and using the tweezers from my manicure set, I placed the velvet pouch containing the midnight star into the lockbox, sealed it, and put it in the trunk, a temporary coffin. Then I drove home. The familiar doorman, Miguel, greeted me with a smile. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Wright. Mr. Wright said you'd be out for a while. Just a quick errand," I said, my smile feeling like a cracked mask. "Is Liam home from soccer yet?" "Not yet, ma'am. Another half hour." Perfect. The penthouse was silent, gleaming, sterile, a beautiful cage. I went to my walk-in closet, to the back, behind the evening gowns. I pulled out a large Longchamp tote y emergency bag, a habit from my mother, who always said to have cash and a change of clothes ready. I'd laughed at her paranoia. Now, I stuffed it with plain jeans, sweaters, underwear, Liam's favorite sweatshirt and tablet, our passports, the emergency cash I kept in my jewelry case. I took only the jewelry that was purely mine, inherited from my grandmother. I left everything from David. I heard the front door open. "Mom, I'm home." Liam's voice, bright and clear, echoed through the apartment. My heart clenched. I zipped the bag, took a deep breath, and walked out. My son stood in the foyer, his cheeks flushed, his soccer uniform muddy. He looked so much like David, but with my eyes, my sweet, innocent boy. "Hey, superstar," I said, pulling him into a hug, inhaling the scent of grass and little boy sweat. I never wanted to let go. "Whoa, Mom, tight." He squirmed, laughing. "Sorry, baby." I released him, holding his shoulders. "Listen, we're going on a little adventure. Right now." His eyes lit up. "A surprise? Like Disney? Even better. We're going to see Nana in Seattle. She's not feeling well, and she really needs to see her favorite grandson." His face fell. "Seattle? But Dad said we're doing the baseball game tomorrow, and I have a play date with Jake." "I know, sweetie, but this is important. Nana needs us." Dad will understand. It'll be a fun boys' weekend for him. The lies flowed smoothly, coated in a mother's practice calm. Go to your room and put your favorite things in your backpack. Quick, like a superhero. 5 minutes. As he ran off, I picked up the landline. I dialed David's private line. He picked up on the second ring. Hannah, everything okay? How's the necklace? His voice, so normal, so caring. The man who shared my bed, who fathered my child, who wanted me to wear a slow, silent death against my heart. It's fine, I said, forcing a wobble into my voice. It's beautiful. But David, it's Mom. In Seattle. Claire just called. Claire, my oldest friend from college. My emergency contact for everything. She fell. It sounds bad. A broken hip. Maybe. She's asking for me. For Liam. A pause. I could almost hear the gears turning. Concern? Annoyance? Calculation? Oh, God. Hannah, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come with you? I can cancel the meetings. No. You have the Morgan presentation on Monday. It's too important. We'll go. I've already booked a flight out of Newark in 2 hours. I'll handle it. I need to be with her. Another pause. Briefer. Of course. Of course you do. Give her my love. And kiss Liam for me. Call me when you land. I will. I love you. Love you too. Sweetheart. Travel safe. I hung up, my hand trembling so violently the receiver clattered in its cradle. Love you too, the ultimate lie. 30 minutes later, with Liam chattering excitedly about seeing the Space Needle, I guided our SUV out of the garage. In the trunk, the lockbox sat silently. In my purse, the prepaid phone was dead weight. As I merged onto the highway heading for Newark Liberty, the glittering skyline of Manhattan receded in the rearview mirror. It looked like a crown of thorns. My hand went to the base of my throat, where the weight of the midnight star had rested for less than a day. The skin felt cold, exposed, alive. I glanced at Liam, singing along to a song on the radio, utterly trusting. I had failed to protect myself. I would not fail to protect him. The plane climbed through the clouds, leaving the city, and the life I knew, in a sea of darkness below. The only thing illuminating the path ahead was the cold, deadly truth, finally seen in the light. Rain streaked the windows of Claire's Seattle bungalow, a constant, soothing whisper against the panic still humming in my veins. Liam, exhausted from the cross-country red-eye, was asleep in the guest room, clutching a worn Space Needle plushy Claire had produced like a magic trick. I sat at her farmhouse kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. The lockbox containing the necklace was sealed inside a Ziploc bag, tucked in Claire's fireproof safe. It felt like having a live grenade in the house. Say it again. Slowly, Claire said, her voice low. She was my antithesis at where I was curated blonde and soft lines. Claire was all sharp angles, dark pixie cut, and the penetrating gaze of a Pulitzer-nominated investigative journalist turned true crime podcaster. The jeweler, Elias, he said the pendant was modified, a cavity, lined with lead, filled with polonium-210. The words tasted like ash, radioactive, poisonous, meant to be undetectable, meant to make me sick and die, and no one would know why. Claire didn't flinch. She took a long sip of her own coffee, black, and David gave it to you, for your anniversary. He said it was his mother's, a legacy piece he'd had restored. You believe that? The part about it being his mother's? I did, until yesterday. Now, I don't know what to believe. I put my head in my hands. Claire, I feel like I'm losing my mind. This sounds insane. My husband, the father of my child, trying to irradiate him to death with a necklace? It's not insane. It's just evil and calculated. She set her mug down with a definitive click. The method is the key. It's not a crime of passion. It's an execution. Slow, deniable. It shows premeditation, resources, and a profound desire to avoid getting his hands dirty. She leaned forward. Hannah, you need to stop thinking like a betrayed wife and start thinking like a detective. The why is usually money or freedom. Usually both. What's your financial situation? I took a shuddering breath. Joint accounts. Mostly. David handles everything. He's the finance wizard. I have a small personal trust for my grandparents. He has had a prenup, but it dissolved after 10 years. We passed that mark 6 months ago. Claire's eyes narrowed. Convenient. Life insurance. A cold, not tightened in my stomach. Yes, we both have policies. I never paid much attention. David said it was part of responsible estate planning. How much is yours worth? I'm not sure. A couple million, I think. Find out. Today. She stood up, grabbing her laptop. And we need professional help. I know a guy. A guy? Jake Morrow. Used to be FBI. Forensic accounting. Financial crimes. Now he's private. He's expensive. Paranoid. And the best human lie detector I've ever met. He also owes me a favor. She was already typing an email. I'm telling him it's urgent. He's in Portland. He can be here by tonight. The next few hours were a blur of grim activity. Using the prepaid phone, I called the number on my life insurance policy document, a PDF I had to dig for in my email archives. Posing as my own assistant, calling on behalf of Mrs. Hannah Wright to confirm beneficiary details. I got a polite customer service rep to read me the basics. Certainly. Let's see. Policy L, 4777. Insured, Hannah Marie Wright. Face value, $10 million. Beneficiary, David Allen Wright. Spouse, and, oh, I see there have been recent additions. Additions? I asked, my voice straining to stay neutral. Yes, ma'am. In the last 18 months. For additional supplemental term policies were added to the portfolio. Let's see, one for 5 million, one for 7, one for 8, and one for $10 million, all with the same beneficiary. That brings the total aggregate death benefit to $40 million. The room swam. $40 million. And the cause of death? Any exclusions. I managed to ask. Standard clauses. Ma'am, suicide within 2 years is contested. Full payout for accidental death. For death by illness, including rare or undiagnosed conditions. The payout is also full, provided the illness wasn't knowingly concealed at the time of underwriting. Is Mrs. Wright, is everything all right? Just a routine audit. Thank you for your help. I ended the call and vomited into Claire's kitchen sink. $40 million. And the payout was maximized for illness, for a rare or undiagnosed condition. He's paying premiums on $40 million of insurance on my life. I whispered to Claire when I could speak again, wiping my mouth. And he bought the last one, the $10 million policy. 3 months ago. Claire's face was stone. That's not estate planning. That's an investment with a very specific ROI. Your death. Jake Morrow arrived just after dusk. He was in his late 40s, with the build of a man who ran trails and the tired eyes of one who'd seen too many ways people broke trust. He listened, completely still, as I laid it out. The necklace, Elias, the insurance. He didn't interrupt. He took the lockbox, put on thick gloves, and used a handheld Geiger counter he'd brought. The sharp, erratic clicking from the device, even through the lead and steel, was all the confirmation we needed. Polonium 210, he said, his voice a quiet rasp, has a short half-life, about 138 days. Means it's hot now, but also means it was obtained relatively recently. This isn't a family heirloom filled with hemlock. This is a custom job. Sophisticated. Expensive. Can we trace it? Claire asked. Doubtful. The Russian mafia. Certain state actors. A few black market labs. It's a ghost. The fact that it's here. He tapped the lockbox. Is the evidence. The source is untraceable by design. He turned to me. You said your regular jeweler died? The one who maintained your pieces before? Benny. Benny Sharp. He had a little shop in the West Village. He died of a heart attack. About 6 months ago. David told me. I was sad, but he was in his 60s. Jake was already typing on his laptop. Benjamin Sharp, 64. Found deceased in his Brooklyn apartment. Official cause: acute myocardial infarction. No autopsy. He had a history of hypertension. He looked up. Convenient timing. Right before your husband starts gifting you a piece that requires specialized, secretive restoration work. A man who knew all your jewelry, who might have noticed if a piece was a fake or newly altered, suddenly dies. A new layer of ice formed in my gut. You think, David? I think it's a data point. Jake said, clinical, in my line of work. Coincidence is usually cognitive bias. Let's look at the money. He spent the next 2 hours, with my shaky permission, accessing my financial world. He used software I didn't understand, pulling statements, wire transfer records, and corporate filings. I saw my life reduced to columns of numbers, a map of betrayal written in decimals. Here, Jake said, pointing at his screen, the joint investment accounts, the ones you said David managed. Over the last 4 years, he's been systematically moving assets, using powers of attorney you granted him. He's shifted liquid funds from accounts held in both your names into trusts and LLCs where you are not a signatory. They're layered, shell within shell, but the ultimate beneficiary is a holding company in Delaware called Midas Horizon, controlled by David. How much? My voice was a thread. Conservatively, $12 million. Your inheritance from your parents. The proceeds from the sale of your Soho loft. The portfolio your grandfather left you. It's all been rehomed. I felt disembodied. The money wasn't the point. The point was the lie. The quiet, meticulous theft happening alongside our morning coffees, our family vacations, his hand on the small of my backup parties, and the insurance premiums. Jake continued, relentless. They're not being paid from your joint household account. They're being paid from a corporate account of Right Capital, his firm, which means they're a business expense, deductible. So he's writing off the cost of killing me? The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Efficient bastard, Claire muttered. Jake's fingers flew over the keyboard. Let's look at Mr. Wright's inner circle, his best man, Marcus Thorne. I knew Marcus. Aloud, backslapping hedge fund type, David's college roommate. He'd gotten remarried 2 years ago to a much younger woman. What about him? His first wife, Alicia, drowned in their pool in the Hamptons. She'd had a few glasses of wine, ruled an accident. She was the daughter of a meatpacking magnate, inherited a very valuable, very developable slice of land in Montauk. That land was sold 6 months after her death. Marcus's fund, which David is a major investor in, was the primary developer. The Sunset Ridge luxury condos, very profitable. The pieces, sharp and ugly, began to click together. Not a single, monstrous idea, but a pattern, a method. David invested in that project. I whispered. He said it was a sure thing. A friend helping a friend. A friend helping a friend dispose of a wife and monetize the corpse. Claire spat. Jake nodded. It's a pattern. Access to wealth through marriage. Removal of the spouse. A tragic accident. Or a sudden illness. No messy divorce. No divided assets. Just a clean, profitable inheritance. With David, it's insurance. With Marcus, it was real estate. Different tools. Same blueprint. I thought of David's grief when Marcus's wife died. The heartfelt eulogy he'd given. The support he'd shown his broken friend. All theater. What do I do? The question sounded small. Lost. Jake looked at me, his gaze unwavering. First, you stay dead. To him, you're a woman who's just been handed a slow-acting poison. He'll be waiting. watching for symptoms. He'll be in control. Patient. We use that. We let him get comfortable. You need to go dark. No contact with old friends. No social media. You're a devoted daughter, tending to your sick mother. We'll feed that narrative through a few controlled channels. And then, we make you sick. I jerked back. What? Not really. We make him think you're sick. The symptoms of low-level radiation poisoning, fatigue, nausea, unexplained bruising. We'll let it leak back to him. Through his channels, he'll believe his plan is working. And when a man thinks he's winning, he gets careless. He makes mistakes. He might accelerate his timeline. And that, Jake said, is when we'll be waiting. That night, long after Claire and Jake had stopped talking strategy, I checked on Liam. He was asleep, peaceful, innocent. I brushed the hair from his forehead. My heart a raw, aching thing. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for his, for the right to be his mother, to see him grow up. The fear was still there, a constant, cold companion, but beneath it, something new was stirring, a hard, glittering shard of fury. David hadn't just betrayed me. He'd made me a fool. He'd turned our life, our love, our family, into a ledger entry, a calculation. Okay, David, I thought, staring out at the relentless Seattle rain. You want to play this game? You picked the wrong wife to poison. The game was on, and for the first time, I knew the rules. 2 weeks in Seattle settled into a grim routine. My world, once defined by charity galas and preschool admissions, now revolved around encrypted messaging apps, forensic accounting reports, and the careful construction of a lie. Claire's guest room was our war room. Maps, timelines, and flow charts, courtesy of Jake, that covered one wall, tracing David's financial movements and social connections in stark, damning detail. My role was to be the slowly failing wife. It was a sick performance. Under Jake's direction, I placed a carefully scripted call to David, timed for a Friday evening when he'd likely be having a drink. Feeling secure, the phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Hannah, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you. His voice was warm, tinged with what sounded like genuine concern. The sound of it, once a comfort, now made my skin crawl. David, I said, forcing a weak tremor into my voice. I was sitting on the floor of Claire's walk-in closet, the door shut, a glass of water nearby to mimic the sound of shaking hands. I don't know what's going on. What's wrong? Is it your mom? Is she worse? No, Mom's stable. It's me. I let a pause hang, a beat of static on the line. I've been feeling so awful, worse than when I got here. The fatigue it's crushing. I can barely get out of bed some days, and I'm losing clumps of hair. David, in the shower. It's scary. I described the symptoms Jake had researched. Bone-deep aches, a metallic taste in my mouth, persistent nausea, all classic, all vague. His response was a masterpiece of concerned husbandry. Oh, honey, that sounds terrible. It must be the stress. On top of everything with your mom. Seattle's damp. 2, maybe it's a bug. Have you seen a doctor? Not yet. I feel so weak. Claire's been taking care of Liam most days. I let my voice break. I miss you. I'm scared. Don't be scared. We'll figure this out. His tone shifted, becoming gently directive. The David I knew, the problem solver. Listen, you can't just sit there and worry. You need to see someone, a real specialist. I want you to come home. I'll get you in with Dr. Evans immediately. He's the best. Dr. Evans, his personal physician, the one who'd given us both clean bills of health just 4 months ago, the one whose practice was partially funded by a grant from a Wright Capital philanthropic arm. According to Jake's quick digging, I don't know if I can travel. David, I'm so tired. Then I'll come to you. I'll charter a plane. Bring a doctor with me. We'll get you sorted. The offer was swift, extravagant, and it reeked of control. He wanted me back in New York. Under his thumb. Under his doctor's care. No, don't do that. It's too much. Let me just see someone here first. A local doctor. Maybe it's just a virus. I needed to strike a balance. Sick enough to be believable, but resistant enough to avoid walking into his trap. A flicker of impatience leaked through. Hannah, be reasonable. You need continuity of care. Dr. Evans has all your records. This patchwork approach isn't safe. At least let me send you to someone in Seattle I trust. A colleague from business school has a brother who's a renowned internist there. Every instinct screamed no. A doctor he trusted was a doctor he potentially owned. Let me try one thing first, I said, my voice small. Claire's friend recommended a clinic. I have an appointment tomorrow. If they can't find anything, I'll come home. I promise. A long silence. I could picture him, in his study, weighing the options. Pushing too hard might spook me. My willingness to consider coming home was the bait. Okay, he finally said, the warmth returning. But if this quack doesn't have answers, you're on the next plane. I'm not losing you to some mystery illness. You hear me? I hear you. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I love you. Love you too. My brave girl. Call me after the appointment. I ended the call and slumped against the closet door, my body trembling with authentic adrenaline. I just danced on the edge of a knife. I emerged to find Jake scowling at his laptop. Claire was pacing. He took the bait. I said, my voice flat. Hup, line, and sinker. He wants me back in New York with his pet doctor. Good, Jake said, not looking up. He's engaging. He's trying to manage the situation. That means he believes you're symptomatic. He tapped a key, and I just found his manager. What? Claire, and I said in unison. Victoria Sloan, risk management consultant. Her firm, Sloan Advisory, is registered in the Caymans. On paper, she advises ultra-high net worth individuals on asset longevity and legacy planning. He turned the screen. It showed a sleek, professional website with stock photos of happy families and vaults. The language was all euphemisms, mitigating protracted familial discord, ensuring smooth generational transition. Sounds slimy, Claire said, but not criminal. Look at her client list, or what I can piece together from shell corporations and blind trusts. Jake pulled up another window. Marcus Thorns Holding Company was a client, starting 6 months before his first wife's pool party. A tech CEO in Palo Alto, whose much older wife died in a hiking accident in Patagonia, was a client. A shipping heir in Miami, whose socialite wife succumbed to a rare blood disorder after a year of mysterious illnesses, also a client. The common denominator? The surviving spouse saw a significant, uncontested financial gain shortly after the unfortunate demise. And all were clients of Sloan Advisory prior the tragedies. A cold certainty settled in my bones. She doesn't manage risk. She eliminates it. Permanently. She's a facilitator. Jake nodded. She finds the weak links. Greedy doctors. Corrupt medical examiners. Officials who can lose paperwork. And weaves them together. She provides the blueprint. The client provides the motive and the paycheck. And David is a client, I stated, a very active one. His firm, Right Capital, has paid Sloan Advisory over $200,000 in consulting fees over the past 18 months, coinciding perfectly with the new insurance policies. Jake zoomed in on a financial record, and there's a second, larger payment from a different David-controlled LLC, made 3 weeks ago, right after your anniversary. Right after he gave you the necklace. A success fee, Claire breathed, or a down payment on the next phase. My stomach turned. What's the next phase? Contingency, Jake said grimly. The polonium was plan A, silent, slow, deniable. But if it failed, or was discovered, or if you became suspicious and tried to run, they'd need a cleaner, quicker option. something that could be staged as an accident, with the polonium symptoms providing a plausible medical backstory. A car crash during a confused episode, a fall down the stairs, a fatal interaction with prescription meds while you were weak from your illness. The room felt airless. They'd thought of everything. My death was a project plan, with milestones and deliverables. We need to get inside their communication, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. If he's talking to her, planning the next step, on it. Jake said, I've been trying to crack their channels. They're using a high-end encrypted service, but everyone gets lazy. They might switch to a regular call or text for something urgent. He looked at me. Your job is to make them urgent, to make them think Plan A is working, but that you're getting nervous, maybe asking the wrong questions. You need to force their hand, make them communicate about moving to Plan B. Over the next few days, I became an actress in a horrific play. I let Claire take candid photos of me looking pale and drawn, wrapped in a blanket on her couch, which she then posted to a locked Instagram account with a few vague, worried captions hanging in there. Tough days, so grateful for my tribe. The account was followed by a handful of her and my old friends, including one woman, Tiffany, who was a notorious gossip and a casual friend of David's sister. The intel would leak. I placed another call to David, sounding weaker, more confused. The doctor here who said my blood work is strange. Some kind of cytopenia? He's talking about a bone marrow specialist. David, what's happening to me? I let genuine tears mix with the fake fear. David's voice was a study in calibrated distress. That's it. I'm chartering a plane tomorrow. You're coming home. We'll see Dr. Evans. We'll get you to the best specialists at Mount Sinai. This local yokel doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm scared to fly, I whimpered, leaning into the role. What if something happens? Nothing will happen. I'll be with you every step of the way. His tone was soothing, final, the predator gently hurting the prey. After the call, Jake, who'd been listening on an earpiece, gave a tight smile. He's rattled. The mention of specific blood work spooked him. He's moving. Now we wait for the chatter. The chatter came 48 hours later. Jake's monitoring software, a terrifyingly invasive program he'd installed on David's phone via phishing link I'd sent weeks ago. A fun article about sustainable investing he'd automatically clicked. Picked up a flurry of activity, not on the encrypted app, but on a burner number registered to a shell company. Jake played the cleaned-up audio for Claire and me. It was David's voice, strained, talking to a cool, professional female voice, Victoria. David, she's asking questions. The doctor mentioned blood counts. The timeline is accelerating. We need to move to the contingency. Victoria, calm, almost bored. Premature escalation carries its own risks. David, the primary vector is still active? David, it has to be. She's wearing the damn thing. She loves it. The symptoms match. But if they start looking for environmental causes, for toxins, Victoria, then we implement phase 2, the sanitization package. You have the travel itinerary? David, I'm bringing her home. Private medevac. I've arranged a car from Teterboro. The route goes through the Palisades. There's a stretch with a known deer crossing issue, a sudden swerve, a guardrail failure with her weakened condition. The trauma would be unsurvivable. The initial illness provides perfect cover for complications. Victoria, and the driver? David, a freelancer, discreet. He understands the vehicle's braking system will have a latent fault. The police report will cite driver error and pre-existing medical distress in the passenger. Victoria, acceptable. Proceed. Initiate the medical narrative with your Dr. Evans. I'll handle the cleanup on the West Coast. The retainer for this tier has been received. David, just make it clean. Victoria, I've come too far to falter now. The call ended. The three of us sat in Claire's living room, the recording hanging in the air like poison gas. Hearing it, in his own voice. So cold, so transactional, it eviscerated the last ghost of the man I thought I'd married. The Palisades, I whispered. The windy road along the Hudson. A perfect place for an accident. Jake's eyes were hard. Now we have it. Solicitation to commit murder. Conspiracy. It's admissible. We can take this to the FBI now. I looked at the lockbox, sitting on Claire's coffee table like a centerpiece. Inside was the necklace, the first murder weapon. On Jake's laptop was the digital record of the second. Plan 1. David wasn't just a monster. He was a meticulous, greedy, impatient monster. No, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Not yet. Claire stared at me. Hannah, for God's sake, why not? Because a car crash on the Palisades is just a plan. A latent fault in a brake line is circumstantial. He'll say the driver misinterpreted, that Victoria was talking about something else. He'll paint me as hysterical, poisoning myself for attention. He'll walk. I met Jake's gaze. You said it yourself. We need him to act. We need him to pull the trigger. We need the freelancer. We need the faulty brakes. We need him on the phone, in person, giving the order. Jake held my look for a long moment. Then a slow, grim smile touched his lips. You want to set the trap, using yourself as bait. He already has a bullseye on me, I said, the fury that had been simmering now at a full, clear roll. Let's make sure he shoots himself in the foot when he takes the shot. I'm going back to New York, and we're going to be waiting for him. The flight back to New York was a study in controlled terror. Every bump of turbulence felt like a premonition. Jake, seated 2 rows behind me in a disguise of baseball cap and nondescript glasses, was a silent anchor. Claire was back in Seattle with Liam, a fact that carved a hollow of fear and guilt in my chest. He thought he was on an extended vacation with his cool aunt. I was flying into a war zone. David's medevac was, of course, a plush private jet, all leather and subdued lighting. He was waiting on the tarmac at Teterboro, looking heartbreakingly like himself, concern etched into his handsome face. Arms open, I walked into the embrace, forcing my body to relax, to lean into him. He smelled of his usual cedar and bergamot cologne, the scent of my attempted murderer. Oh, Hannah, he murmured into my hair, holding me tight. You feel so thin. I've been out of my mind. I'm just so tired, I whispered, leaning back to look at him. I'd used pale powder and a subtle gray eyeshadow to deepen the shadows under my eyes. Claire had trimmed my hair to look thinner, more brittle. The doctors in Seattle, they didn't know. They said maybe an autoimmune thing, maybe a rare blood disorder. They used words I didn't understand. I let a tear slip out, perfectly timed. His thumb brushed it away. His touch was gentle, practiced. Sure, it's over. You're home. Dr. Evans is expecting us at his office first thing tomorrow. We'll get answers. He guided me to the waiting car, a black SUV, not his usual driver, a new man, with a thick neck and silent demeanor. The freelancer, my heart hammered against my ribs. The drive to the city was tense. David held my hand, asking soft questions about my mother, about Liam. I gave vague, weary answers. My performance was a high-wire act, sick enough to be believable, but not so sick as to be immediately hospitalized. I needed to be ambulatory. I needed to be capable of getting into a car for a fateful ride. At the penthouse, everything was sterile perfection. Flowers filled the foyer. My favorite tea was laid out. It was a stage set for a convalescence that was never meant to happen. I've missed you, David said, helping me off with my coat. His eyes scanned me. A clinical assessment masked as love. Looking for signs. I coughed. A dry, rattling hack I'd practiced. I've missed you too. I lied. It's good to be home. That night, as I pretended to sleep, the real work began. Jake, from a rented van parked a block away, executed the digital part of the plan, using the access he'd established. He bypassed the encryption on David's secure cloud storage. It was a corporate account linked to Right Capital. David's arrogance was his flaw. He thought financial grade encryption was impenetrable. He didn't account for a former FBI agent with a black bag toolkit and a righteous cause. Around 2 a.m., my prepaid phone vibrated. A text from Jake. He's got a folder labeled H Medical. Downloading now. Also found archived chats with V standby. I lay in the dark, David's steady breathing beside me, and watched the progress bar on a tiny screen under the covers. The H Medical folder contained exactly what we feared. Falsified physician notes from a Dr. Evans I'd never seen, detailing a progressive, degenerative neurological condition with atypical presentation. There were research articles on fatal familial insomnia, on Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.rare, terrifying, and hard to definitively diagnose without an autopsy. An autopsy that, the notes suggested, the grieving husband might decline for religious or personal reasons. It was the narrative architecture of my death. Then, the jackpot, an audio file, time-stamped from 2 days ago, David and Victoria. I plugged in earbuds. The sound a ghost in the dark room. Victoria, the contingency is prepped. The asset is in place. The vehicle for the transport from Teterboro has been serviced. The failure will be catastrophic and will read as mechanical. The driver has been compensated for his family's future loss. David, understood. And the narrative? Victoria, the grieving husband, bringing his desperately ill wife home for specialized care. A tragic accident en route. The pre-existing condition explains any anomalous trauma findings. The police will see a distraught, heroic man who tried to save his wife. The media will eat it up. You'll be a sympathetic figure. The insurance payouts will be swift. David, and the boy? My blood turned to ice. Victoria, a trust, as discussed, with you as the sole guardian and executor. Of course, a double tragedy. The funds will be consolidated, cleaner, in the long run. David, good. Proceed. I'll have her at Teterboro at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Make it look like the deer. Victoria, it's already done. Safe travels. David, to a new horizon. I stopped the recording. I pulled the earbuds out. I stared at the ceiling, the ornate plasterwork swimming in the dark. And the boy, he wasn't just willing to orphan his son. He was planning to profit from it, to consolidate the funds. Liam's face, trusting and bright, filled my mind. A red, primal rage, colder and sharper than any fear, ignited in my core. The next morning, I performed the final act. Over breakfast, I barely touched. I let my hand shake so badly the orange juice spilled. I slurred my words slightly, as if my tongue was thick. I pretended to lose my train of thought mid-sentence. Staring blankly at the window, David watched, a beautiful mask of concern hardening into something else, a kind of eager, clinical satisfaction. His plan was working. His poison was taking effect. His contingency was in motion. It's okay, sweetheart, he soothed, mopping up the juice. Dr. Evans will help. Let's get you ready. In the bedroom, as I changed into soft, travel-friendly clothes, I activated the second phase. With a microscalpel from a kit Jake had provided, I made a tiny, precise cut in the inner lining of David's favorite blue suit jacket, the one he'd laid out for the emotional press conference he'd no doubt planned after my death. Into the slit, I inserted a wafer-thin GPS tracker and a voice-activated microtransmitter. Jake's toys. The devices were self-adhesive and would nestle invisibly in the padding. Hannah, you ready? David called from the doorway. I jumped, turning with a hand to my heart. You startled me, I said, forcing a weak smile, just getting dizzy for a second. He was all solicitousness. Here, lean on me. The ride to Dr. Evans's office was in a town car. David was tense, checking his phone. I played my part, leaning against the window, feigning exhaustion. At the sleek Park Avenue office, Dr. Evans, a man with the bland, polished demeanor of a talk show host that did a perfunctory examination. He listened to my heart, looked in my eyes, and nodded along to David's carefully curated summary of my symptoms. It does sound consistent with the progressive condition we discussed. David, Evans said, his voice a smooth, empty river, the fatigue, the neurological signs. Hannah, we'll need to run some more tests. Of course, but I'm afraid it's time to consider more aggressive, inpatient care for your own safety. This was the play. Get me admitted. Then, a compassionate transfer to a specialized facility. A transfer that would never arrive. I just want to go home, I whispered, plain confused and afraid. David took my hand. The best care isn't at home right now. Honey, Dr. Evans has a wonderful facility upstate. We'll get you there this afternoon. I'll take you myself. This afternoon. The 3 p.m. transport. The serviced vehicle. The deer. Back in the car. Heading to the penthouse to gather my things. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A flicker of something. Anticipation. Crossing his face. It was a text. I pretended to doze, my head against the window, but my eyes were slitted open, reflecting the screen in the glass. The message preview flashed. V. Package secured. Route confirmed. Drivers a go. ETA to final destination, 4:15 p.m. Will confirm closure. David typed a one-word reply. Proceed. He then made a call, his voice shifting to a boardroom tone. Marcus? Yeah, it's David. Listen, I'm going to be out of touch for the rest of the day and maybe tomorrow. Hannah's, it's not good. They're moving her to a specialized unit. Yeah, tough time. Thanks, brother. I'll call when I can. He hung up, creating his alibi with his oldest friend, his partner in matrimonial murder. We reached the penthouse. Just pack a small bag. Sweetheart, David said, his voice dripping with faux tenderness. Comfortable clothes. Anything you need. The facility will have. I nodded. Docile. In the bedroom. With the door closed, I texted Jake on the prepaid phone. It's today. 3 p.m. from Teterboro. Vehicle is serviced. Destination ETA 4.15. He just confirmed proceed to V. The reply was immediate. We're ready. NYPD major crimes and FBI are on standby. They have the audio. They'll intercept before you leave the airport perimeter. Do not get in that vehicle. Find an excuse at the last second. At 2:15 p.m., David ushered me into the elevator. He was carrying my small bag. I was leaning heavily on his arm. The tracker in his jacket was live. Jake and a swarm of federal agents were watching a blip move across a map of Manhattan, heading for the tunnel to New Jersey. Almost there. My love, David murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. His lips felt like a spider's bite. It's all going to be okay. I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time that day with a clear, steady gaze. The foggy, sick patient act fell away. I know it is, David, I said, my voice quiet, cold, and utterly sane, because I'm not getting in that car. He stopped. The elevator dinged, opening to the private garage. The black SUV was there, engine running. The thick-necked driver stood by the open rear door. David's face underwent a subtle, terrifying shift. The concern melted, revealing the cold, impatient calculation beneath. Hannah, don't be difficult. You're not well. You need to get to the facility. I need a lot of things, I said, taking a step back, out of his reach. But a one-way trip off the Palisades isn't one of them. His eyes widened, just for a fraction of a second. Then they narrowed. The mask was gone. What are you talking about? You're confused. The illness you gave me? I reached into the pocket of my coat and pulled out the small, lead-line pouch. I held it up. Midnight Star. A beautiful name for a murder weapon. Polonium 210. David, really? You couldn't just ask for a divorce? All the color drained from his face. It was the confirmation I didn't know I needed. The sheer, unguarded shock. He hadn't just been discovered, his perfect, elegant plan had been unraveled at its core. "You're sick," he hissed, lunging for me. "You don't know what you're saying." At that moment, the garage doors exploded with sound and light. Sirens wailed, tires screeched, unmarked SUVs and NYPD cruisers boxed us in. Doors flew open, and agents in vests swarmed out, weapons drawn. "FBI, David Wright, get on the ground." Now, David froze, his hands halfway to grabbing me. He looked from the guns to me, to the driver who was now being slammed against the hood of the SUV and cuffed. The utter, perfect shock on his face was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. I took another step back, into the space cleared by the agents. I looked at the man I'd shared a bed with for a decade, the father of my child. "You asked about the boy, David," I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. "He's safe. From you." As they pushed him to the concrete, reading him his rights. Conspiracy to commit murder. Solicitation. Attempted murder. His eyes never left mine. They weren't pleading or angry. They were just incredulous, baffled. The master of the ledger, the architect of the perfect crime, had been outmaneuvered. An agent, a woman with a stern face and kind eyes, approached me. "Mrs. Wright? I'm Special Agent Miller. We have your friend Jake in the van. We have the audio. We have the vehicle. The driver's already talking. You're safe now." I nodded, my knees finally buckling, not from pretend illness, but from the tidal wave of relief and adrenaline crash. As they led me away, I heard David's voice, sharp and furious, cutting through the garage. "This is a mistake. She's ill. She's paranoid. I was trying to help her. You're listening to a sick woman." I didn't look back. The trap had sprung, and for the first time, I was on the right side of the bars. The interrogation room at the FBI's New York field office was a study in sterile tension. I sat on one side of a cold metal table, Agent Miller and a stone-faced assistant U.S. attorney named Vargas on the other. A digital recorder blinked its red eye between us. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. "Walk us through the moment you first suspected your husband." "Mrs. Wright," Vargas said. His voice was calm, devoid of judgment, a tool for prying loose facts. I did. Again. I started with the necklace, Elias's warning, the flight to Seattle. I detailed the insurance policies, the financial transfers Jake uncovered, the conversation with Marcus's first wife, the recorded call with Victoria Sloan about the deer and the service vehicle. I presented the lockbox containing the necklace, now sealed in an evidence bag. A forensic technician in a hazmat suit had taken it away with the reverence of a bomb squad. "And you recorded these conversations with Mr. Wright, where you feigned illness, on the advice of your investigator, Jake Morrow?" Agent Miller asked, her pen poised. "Yes." Jake advised that to establish intent and draw out the conspiracy, I needed to make David believe his plan was working. He said it was the only way to get admissible evidence of a murder-for-hire plot. Vargas exchanged a glance with Miller. "Mr. Morrow's methods are aggressive. The warrant for the digital surveillance is problematic, but the audio from the garage, your husband's reaction when confronted, and the physical evidence of the necklace are compelling. The driver, a man named Vince Kovacs, is singing like a canary. He confirms he was hired through a cutout to cause a catastrophic accident on a specified route. For $50,000 in untraceable crypto, he's given us the wallet address. We're tracing it." "And David?" I asked, my voice harder than I intended. "In a holding cell. He's invoked his right to counsel. He's not saying a word, but he's sweating," Miller said, a faint trace of satisfaction in her tone. "His lawyer, a shark named Alan Cressmore, is on his way. The game begins now." The game moved to a federal arraignment the next day. I watched from the back of the crowded courtroom as David was led in, wearing an ill-fitting jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He looked smaller. The arrogant set of his shoulders was gone, replaced by a stiff, defiant posture. His eyes swept the room, landing on me. There was no remorse, no plea, just a cold, searing hatred that felt like a physical blow. Then his lawyer, a silver-haired man with a $2,000 suit and a demeanor of bored superiority, whispered in his ear, and David's face smoothed into a mask of wounded dignity. The charges were read: conspiracy to commit murder, use of a weapon of mass destruction, the polonium, interstate fraud, wire fraud, and solicitation of a crime of violence. The judge, a severe woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, denied bail. The nature of the alleged crimes, the sophistication involved, and the extreme risk to the named victim demonstrate a clear and present danger to the community and a profound flight risk. She intoned. David's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Cressmore argued passionately about a loving husband framed by a troubled, possibly mentally ill wife and a rogue, fame-seeking investigator, but the judge was unmoved. As marshals led him away, David looked over his shoulder, not at me, but at the press gallery. He gave a slight, tragic shake of his head, the perfect picture of a bewildered innocent. The cameras ate it up. Outside the courthouse, a scrum of reporters descended. Microphones were shoved in my face. Mrs. Wright, did you ever fear for your life? Hannah, is it true you uncovered a multi-million-dollar murder plot? Do you believe your husband is a serial killer? Jake, who had materialized at my elbow like a scowling guardian angel, held up a hand. No questions. Mrs. Wright has no comment at this time. He guided me through the throng toward a waiting sedan. Claire was inside, having flown in from Seattle after leaving Liam with a trusted friend. You okay? Claire asked, squeezing my hand. He looked at me like I was a bug. I said, the chill of that gaze still in my bones. Like I was an inconvenience he'd swat away. He's cornered. Cornered animals are dangerous, but they're also predictable. Jake said from the front seat, his defense will be two-pronged. 1, you're crazy and framed him. 2, the evidence is tainted because of how I obtained it. Cressmore will try to get the audio recordings and the financials thrown out. We need to build a wall he can't climb. How? I asked. By finding something he can't explain away. Something that doesn't come from you or from my creative sourcing. He turned to look at me. The necklace. We need to know its full history. You said David told you it was his mother's. That's what he said. Midnight Star. His mother's legacy. We need to prove that's a lie. If we can establish the necklace has a different, darker history, it links premeditation to a pattern. It's not just a random gift he poisoned. It's a trophy. The FBI's forensic lab worked with terrifying speed. The polonium was confirmed. Its isotopic signature traced to a batch believed to have been smuggled out of a decommissioned Russian research facility in the 90s. The lead lining, the cavity dot, all confirmed. It was a professional, custom kill device, but the history was trickier. Eleanor Wright's estate records showed no such necklace. David had no sisters. The only other family was a distant, senile aunt in Florida. Frustrated, I went back to the source. From a secure FBI phone, I called Elias Berkowitz's workshop. His granddaughter answered, her voice thick with tears. Grandpa Elias, he passed away 2 nights ago, in his sleep. The police said it was his heart. He was old. The ice water of dread flooded me again. I'm so sorry. I managed to say, when did it happen? The night before last. He'd had a good day. He seemed worried about something lately. But that night, he just went to bed and didn't wake up. 2 nights ago, the night after David's arrest. Coincidence was a luxury I no longer believed in. I called Agent Miller immediately. We'll look into it, she said, her voice grim, but without evidence of foul play. An elderly man dying in his sleep. Victoria Sloan. I pressed. She handles things. A jeweler who can identify the work. Who knew it wasn't an heirloom? That's a loose end. We're looking for her. She's vanished. Her Cayman accounts are drained. She's a ghost. Miller paused. But we have a lead on the necklace. Our art crimes unit ran the design through an international database of stolen and unique jewelry. We got a hit. My grip tightened on the phone. What hit? A piece matching that description, platinum. Art Nouveau filigree. A 2-carat-old European cut, central diamond that was reported stolen 22 years ago in a home invasion in Greenwich, Connecticut. The owner was a woman named Margot Brennan. She was killed during the robbery. Blunt force trauma. The case was never solved. Margot, the name from the scratches inside the pendant. M+D. Not Margot and someone else. Margot and David? But that was impossible. 22 years ago, David would have been. How old was Margot Brennan? I asked. My mouth dry. 24. A graduate student at Columbia. The necklace was a gift from her fiancé, according to the original police report. A family heirloom on his side. Who was the fiancé? A rustle of papers. The report lists the fiancé as the one who reported the robbery and her death. A young finance intern named David Allen Wright. The floor fell away. I gripped the edge of the table. David Allen Wright, the same. It wasn't his mother's necklace. It belonged to a woman he was engaged to. A woman who died. A woman whose murderer was never found. The case was closed as a random. Violent burglary. Miller continued, her voice clinical. No suspects. No fingerprints. The fiancé had an alibi. He was at a work retreat in the Hamptons, confirmed by dozens of people. He was considered a victim himself. A perfect alibi. A tragic loss. A stolen necklace that vanished only to resurface decades later. Gifted to his next wife as a family heirloom. Modified into a murder weapon. He kept it. I whispered, the horror of it dawning fully. He killed her, or had her killed, and he kept the necklace for 22 years, and then he reused it. The sheer gothic horror of it stole my breath. It wasn't just a tool. It was a souvenir, a trophy from his first kill, now repurposed for his second. It gives us motive for the original crime. Miller said, if he was the beneficiary of Margot's life insurance or a trust. We're digging. More importantly, it shatters his loving husband. Misunderstood gift defense. It shows a pattern of acquiring wealth through the deaths of women close to him. It shows premeditation spanning decades. I thought of the cold hatred in David's eyes in the courtroom. It wasn't just because I'd caught him. It was because I'd desecrated his trophy. I'd taken Midnight Star back. We need to find a link between David and Victoria Sloan from back then. I said, anew, fierce clarity taking hold. If she was his facilitator for me, maybe she was for Margot too. Maybe it wasn't a random burglary. Maybe it was a sanitization package from 22 years ago. It's a solid theory, Miller conceded. But we need proof. Cressmore will paint Margot's death as a tragic, unrelated cold case. A coincidence. Then we won't let him. I said, a plan forming. Cold and hard. We need to make the jury see the pattern, not just through documents, but through a story. His story. How? Agent Miller asked. I took a deep breath. You have the necklace. The FBI has it. I want to see it again. Not just the report. The physical object. And I want a forensic photographer there. I want close-up, high-resolution pictures of every single detail, especially the inside of the setting, especially those scratches. What are you looking for? I'm not sure yet, I said. But David is a sentimental monster. He kept the necklace. He had it modified, but he didn't melt it down. The scratches, the M+D, that was important to him. It's a clue he left for himself. Maybe it's a clue for us. 2. The next day, in a sterile FBI evidence viewing room, I faced the necklace again. It lay on a black cloth under a bright light, sealed in a clear forensic bag. It looked smaller now, not glamorous or haunted, Just a cold, ugly piece of metal and stone. A container for poison and memory. The photographer took his pictures. I guided him. Closer. Inside the gallery. There, where the prongs meet the setting. Enhanced that. On the high-resolution monitor. The scratches swam into focus. Magnified 100 times. They were crude. Done with a sharp tool. Not a laser. M+D. But beneath the magnifying lens, something else emerged. Not a plus sign. A tiny, clumsily engraved symbol between the letters. It wasn't a plus. It was a crude, tiny skull. M skull. D. I read aloud. The blood draining from my face. Not Margot and David. Agent Miller breathed beside me. Margot killed by David. It was a confession. A sick, proud trophy mark. A serial killer's tag. Etched into his first victim's jewelry, which he then used to court and kill his second. We have him, I said, the words solid as stone. Now we make sure the whole world sees it. The trial of the state of New York v. David Allen Wright began on a rain-slicked Monday in September. The courtroom was packed, a low hum of anticipation hanging in the air-conditioned chill. The press gallery was full. In the front row, behind the prosecution's table, I sat with Claire on one side and Jake on the other, a silent wall of support. I wore a simple navy dress, my posture straight, my face a mask of calm I did not feel. Across the aisle, David, in a tailored charcoal suit that looked absurdly normal, sat with Alan Cressmore. He did not look at me. He studied the jury, a group of 8 men and 4 women, with the focused intensity of a chess master. Assistant U.S. Attorney Vargas opened for the prosecution. He was methodical, unflashy, and devastating. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, standing before them, hands clasped. This is a case about greed, patience, and the monstrous belief that a human life is a ledger entry to be balanced. The defendant, David Wright, didn't just want to be rid of his wife. He wanted to be rich from her death. And when one sophisticated, slow-acting method of murder was discovered, he simply ordered another, more direct one. This is not a crime of passion. It is a calculated, long-term business plan where the profit was a $40 million insurance payout. And the cost was Hannah Wright's life. He walked them through it. The financials, first at the shifted assets, the labyrinth of LLCs, the insurance policies that ballooned from $2 million to $40 million in 18 months. Boring, dry numbers that painted a picture of cold, systematic looting. He called the insurance underwriter, who testified that David had been particularly insistent on clauses covering rare and undiagnosed illnesses. Then, the necklace. The jury leaned forward as the lead-lined evidence box was brought in. An FBI forensic physicist explained polonium-210, its toxicity, its use in assassinations. He displayed diagrams of the pendant's cavity, the lead shielding. The word WMD was used. It landed with a thud. Cressmore's cross-examination was a masterpiece of misdirection. Agent, this polonium, it's very rare. Yes, the kind of thing a foreign intelligence service might use. Not something a finance guy from Tribeca could just order online. Correct? It is highly controlled. Yes. So isn't it more likely that if this necklace was poisoned that it was done by someone else? Perhaps by a third party with a grudge against Mr. Wright, framing him by targeting his wife. The defendant was in sole possession of the necklace for 6 months for restoration, the agent replied stonily. Allegedly, Cressmore said with a dismissive wave, as if the whole thing was a tedious misunderstanding. The star witness, of course, was the driver, Vince Kovacs, balding, with tired eyes. He took the stand and, in a flat Bronx accent, described the offer. 50 grand in Bitcoin. A car with a brake line that would fail at a specific curve on the Palisades Parkway. My job was to drive it, survive the crash, and collect the second half. The passenger wasn't supposed to make it. I was told she was already sick, wouldn't survive the trauma. And who hired you? Vargas asked. A woman. Called herself V. Set it all up over encrypted chat. But the money trail led back to a shell company. The feds traced the shell company to a man who does discreet services for a consultancy called Sloan Advisory. Their client list had one David Wright on it. Paid a hefty success fee 3 weeks before I was hired. Cressmore pounced. So you never met David Wright? Never spoke to him. This V is a ghost. And you're a would-be killer trying to save your own skin with a story. Correct? Kovacs shrugged. I'm telling you what I know. The car was ready. The route was set. The money came from his direction. I'm not a good guy, but I'm not taking the fall for his brainstorm. The trial's rhythm was a brutal back and forth. The prosecution built a wall of circumstantial evidence. Motive, means, opportunity. Cressmore chipped away at it, painting me as hysterical, Jake as a shady operative who'd illegally bugged his client, and Kovacs as a liar. He portrayed David as a devoted husband bewildered by his wife's sudden breakdown and the conspiracy theory she'd concocted with a rogue investigator. Then, Vargas called a witness I didn't expect. An elderly detective from the Greenwich, Connecticut PD, retired now. He testified about the 22-year-old cold case, the murder of Margot Brennan, the stolen necklace. The fiancé, David Wright, was grief-stricken. The old detective rasped. Solid alibi. We had nothing. The case went cold. The necklace was never recovered. Vargas entered the original police report and a grainy, blown-up photograph of a young Margot wearing the necklace. Your Honor, the people would like to enter Exhibit 44, a photograph of the victim, Margot Brennan, and the necklace known as Midnight Star, and Exhibit 45, the necklace itself, recovered from the defendant's possession. Cressmore was on his feet. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, this is a tragic, unrelated event from decades ago. This is nothing but prejudicial character assassination. It goes directly to knowledge, intent, and pattern. Your Honor, Vargas countered calmly. The defendant claimed this necklace was a family heirloom from his mother. This evidence proves that is a lie. It proves the necklace is, in fact, stolen property from a murder victim to whom he was engaged. It shows a pattern of acquiring valuable assets through the death of an intimate partner. The judge, after a tense silence, overruled the objection. The jury may consider it for the limited purpose of establishing the defendant's knowledge regarding the provenance of the necklace and his truthfulness. Cressmore looked furious. David, for the first time, showed a crack. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on his temple. He scribbled a frantic note to his lawyer. Vargas saved the best for last. He called the FBI forensic photographer. He put the blown-up, high-resolution image of the inside of the pendants setting on the screen for the entire court to see. The crude scratches, the M, the tiny, unmistakable skull, the D. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Can you explain what this marking indicates? Vargas asked. It appears to be an engraving, done by hand with a sharp instrument. The photographer said, the letters M and D, with a symbol resembling a human skull between them. In your expert opinion, is this marking contemporary with the necklaces manufactured nearly a century ago? No, sir. The tool marks are different, fresher. This was added much later, likely within the last few decades. Vargas turned to the jury. Margot Brennan, killed. David Wright. He pointed to the screen. M skull. D a trophy. A confession. Kept for 22 years. Then given to his next wife, Hannah Wright, after being loaded with a radioactive poison. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not the action of an innocent man. This is the signature of a predator. The courtroom was dead silent. All eyes were on David. His face was a ghastly white. The mask of wounded dignity was gone, replaced by something raw and feral. He stared at the image of his own childish, Horrific scrawl, displayed 10 feet tall for the world to see. Cressmore's cross-examination was uncharacteristically brief. A few mumbled questions about the certainty of the dating. The damage was irreparable. The defense's case was short. They called David's old friend and business partner, Marcus Thorne, who gave a halting, sweaty testimony about what a great guy David was. Under Vargas's cross, Marcus collapsed, admitting he knew nothing about David's personal life and becoming visibly panicked when asked about the development of his first wife's land. They called a hired gun psychiatrist who testified that I showed signs of paranoid personality disorder and could have fabricated the story. Vargas dismantled him, getting him to admit he'd never met me, and his diagnosis was based solely on files provided and paid for by the defense. David did not take the stand. Cressmore, in his closing, gave a fiery performance, painting a picture of a marriage destroyed by a woman's mental collapse and an investigator's illegal scheme. They've given you a story, a scary story, but look at the man, a pillar of the community, a father. Would that man, he pointed dramatically at David, who now looked pale and shrunken, scratch his skull into a piece of jewelry? It's grotesque. It's the stuff of campfire tales. The prosecution wants you to believe in a monster, because the facts didn't add up to guilt. But the facts were all the jury saw. Vargas, in his calm, closing argument, simply walked them back through the ledger. Follow the money, $40 million. Follow the poison, a WMD in a locket. Follow the history, a dead fiancé, a stolen necklace, a trophy marked with a skull. This isn't a story, it's a blueprint, and the architect is sitting right there. He didn't even look at David. He didn't need to. The jury was out for less than 8 hours. When they filed back in, their faces were grim. Not a single one looked at David. The foreman, a middle-aged teacher, handed the verdict forms to the clerk. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder. How do you find? Guilty. A stifled cry from the gallery. David closed his eyes. On the count of use of a weapon of mass destruction. Guilty. On the count of interstate fraud. Guilty. On the count of solicitation of a crime of violence. Guilty. 7 counts. 7 guilty verdicts. A clean sweep. The judge called for order in the erupting courtroom. She looked at David. David Allen Wright, you have been convicted of heinous, premeditated crimes that show a profound and calculated disregard for human life. You are a danger to this community and to any person you perceive as a means to an end. Sentencing will be in 90 days. Remanded to custody. As the marshals moved in to cuff him, David finally snapped. He turned, not to the judge, but to me. The feral look was back, his eyes blazing with pure, undiluted hate. You think you've won? He spat, his voice a harsh whisper that carried in the sudden quiet. You stupid bitch. You have no idea what you've started. Victoria isn't gone. She's watching. And you've just made yourself a much more interesting target. A marshal clamped a hand on his shoulder, pulling him back. But the words hung in the air. A venomous promise. I didn't flinch. I met his gaze, my own eyes dry and cold. I said nothing. I just watched as they led the monster away, likely forever. Outside, on the courthouse steps, the rain had stopped. Vargas and Agent Miller shook my hand. It's over, Miller said. Is it? I asked, thinking of David's last words, of Victoria the ghost, of a network that had operated with impunity for who knew how long. Jake stepped closer, his voice low. The legal part is over. The rest, that's just beginning. I looked at the banks of microphones, the shouting reporters. Claire squeezed my arm. I stepped forward. I had something to say, not as a victim, but as a survivor who was just getting started. 90 days after the verdict. The sentence was a formality. The probation office's report. A dense document detailing David's exceptionally heinous, cruel, and financially motivated crimes. Recommended a life term. The only question was how many lifetimes the judge would impose. The sentencing hearing felt like a grotesque epilogue. The same courtroom, thinner crowds. David, in a prison jumpsuit now, looked diminished, but his eyes held a new, simmering volatility. Alan Crestmore, his confidence visibly cracked, stood to deliver a final, desperate plea. Your Honor, he began, voice strained. David Wright has been a pillar of his community, a benefactor to charities, a father. The picture painted at trial was a fiction, a narrative constructed by a wife suffering from severe paranoia and aided by an investigator with a known disregard for the law. The so-called trophy marking, a crude scratch of unknown origin, given monstrous significance by a prosecutor in need of a sensational story. My client maintains his absolute innocence. To condemn him to die in prison based on this house of cards, would be a tragedy. He sat down. The judge, a woman who had seen every brand of human deceit, adjusted her glasses. The court has received, and has read, a victim impact statement from Hannah Wright. Does the prosecution have anything to add before I pronounce sentence? Assistant U.S. Attorney Vargas stood. Just this, Your Honor. The defense speaks of a house of cards. The people built a fortress, of forensic evidence, of financial records, of the defendant's own words, plotting a murder on tape, and of history, a pattern. We would ask the court to consider that David Wright didn't just attempt to murder his wife. He turned her into a long-term investment vehicle. He treated her life, and the life of his previous fiancée, as a commodity to be liquidated. That is a particular kind of evil that merits the fullest extent of the court's power. The judge nodded. She looked at David. Mr. Wright, you have the right to make a statement before I sentence you. David stood slowly. He didn't look at the judge. He turned, his cuffed hands resting on the table, and fixed his gaze on me. It was a long, chilling look. Then he turned back. I have nothing to say to this court, he said, his voice flat, stripped of all its former charm. It is a corrupt house. My statement is my silence. The judge's mouth tightened. Very well. The crimes of which you have been convicted represent a profound, premeditated assault on the very concept of justice and human dignity. You weaponized intimacy. You commercialized murder. You showed not a shred of remorse, only a continued contempt for the process. Accordingly, it is the judgment of this court that you be committed to the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a term of 80 years, to be served consecutively on all counts, with no possibility of parole. 80 years. He was 45. It was a death sentence in a concrete box. A murmur went through the room. David didn't react. He just stared straight ahead as the marshals led him away, out of the courtroom and out of the world. The finality of it should have brought peace. It brought a hollow quiet. The battle was won, but the field was scorched. The aftermath was a whirlwind of cold, hard business. With David incarcerated, the civil proceedings moved swiftly. My lawyers, a pit bull firm specializing in asset recovery for fraud victims, tore into his empire. The prenup was void due to the attempted murder. The shifted assets, the LLCs, the shell companies, all were pierced. One by one, the courts froze everything. Wright Capital was placed in receivership. Its assets, built partly on my family's money and entirely on David's grift, were liquidated. I sat in a conference room, across from a team of weary forensic accountants and my lead attorney, Susan Chin. The insurance policies are void. Obviously, Susan said, tapping a stack of papers. The companies are suing to recover the premiums he paid, which is rich, but that's their problem. The primary estate is yours, free and clear. The value of the Wright Capital liquidation, after creditors, is approximately $22 million. It's dirty money. Hannah, I looked at the number. It was blood money, poison money. Set it up. I said, every penny. Create a foundation. the Midnight Star Foundation. Fund research into radiation poisoning treatment and detection. Provide grants for legal aid for victims of intimate partner violence, especially financial coercion and murder-for-hire schemes. Set up a separate victim compensation fund, anonymously, for the families of Victoria Sloan's other clients. We'd learned of 3 other probable victims whose cases were now being re-examined. Susan nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Consider it done. The final piece of the civil case was the quietest and the most satisfying. I sued for sole, permanent custody of Liam, with a termination of David's parental rights, based on the conviction and the testimony about his chilling question. And the boy? No family court judge on earth would deny it. David, through a jailhouse lawyer, did not contest it. The order was signed. Liam was mine, and safe. A month after the sentencing, Agent Miller called. We found her, or she found us. Victoria Sloan. My breath caught. Where? Walking into the U.S. Attorney's office in Manhattan with 2 lawyers. She wants a deal. She's ready to talk. About everything. The deal was struck. Full immunity from prosecution for her direct role in the plot against me, in exchange for her full, verified testimony against David, and a complete mapping of her network. She would enter witness protection. The cleaners, the corrupt doctors, the officials in medical examiners' offices in 3 states, she named them all. It was a house cleaning of hidden, privileged evil. As part of the agreement, I was allowed to be present, behind a one-way mirror, for her debriefing. I needed to see her. I needed to understand the mechanism. Victoria Sloan was nothing like I'd imagined. In her late 40s, she was handsome, with intelligent eyes and the calm, poised demeanor of a veteran news anchor. She sat in the interrogation room, sipping water, her voice clear and dispassionate as she unspooled her career. David Wright was a particular type of client, she explained to the stone-faced agents. The financially motivated ones are the most common, but he had a taste for it, a sense of aesthetics. The necklace, that was his idea. He'd kept it all those years. He called it poetic recycling, using the instrument of one transition to facilitate another. One of the agents, a young woman, looked disgusted. The murder of Margot Brennan. Was that you? Victoria gave a slight, elegant shrug. That was before my time with him, but he alluded to it. He needed a reliable solution for a partner who was becoming inconvenient. Her family had money, but it was tied up in trusts until marriage. He introduced me to the concept. A staged burglary gone wrong. Simpler times. Less forensic awareness. I provided the labor. He provided the alibi and the blueprint of the home. It was my first major project. It proved our compatibility. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. Her first major project. Why husband had been a patron of assassins. And Hannah Wright? The agent pressed. A more complex canvas. He wanted it slow, deniable. He was obsessed with the idea of a perfect, blameless grief. The illness narrative was his creation. My role was sourcing the material and arranging the contingency. The polonium came from a retired Russian physicist in Montenegro we'd used before. The modification to the necklace was done by a gemologist in Antwerp who asks no questions. When the jeweler in New York, Berkowitz, identified the work, David became agitated. He requested a natural termination for the old man. I arranged it, a cardiac inducer in his evening tea. Painless. I closed my eyes. Elias, his granddaughter's tearful voice. He went to bed and didn't wake up. And the car accident, standard contingency protocol, when the primary vector is compromised or discovered, accelerate to a plausible, trauma-based endpoint. The illness provides the pretext. David was very specific about the location. The Palisades. He'd driven it with her. He said the drop was cinematic. She said it like she was discussing a client's preference for Bordeaux over Burgundy. They showed her the necklace. The photo of them, de-engraving. For the first time, Her cool facade cracked into a faint, professional smile. Ah, the vanity. That was always his flaw. He had to leave a mark, to own it. I told him sentimentality was a vulnerability. He said it was the point. When the debriefing was over, I asked to speak to her. The agents were reluctant, but I insisted. They brought me into the room. Victoria looked up, assessing me with no more emotion than she'd assess a piece of furniture. Mrs. Wright, she said politely. Why? I asked. The single word holding all of it, the horror, the incomprehension. She understood. Why cooperate? My network is burned. David's conviction saw to that. The professionals we employed are being rounded up. My value as a free agent is zero. My value as a witness, however, is considerable. It's a simple transaction. My freedom and a new identity. In exchange for closing the books on several profitable, but now concluded enterprises. It's just good business. You helped kill innocent people. I provided a service for which there was a demand. She corrected gently. I never judged the client's motivations, only the feasibility of the project and the soundness of the payment. You, of all people, should understand the importance of sound financial planning. There was no malice in it. It was her philosophy, laid bare. I had no more words for her. She was a different species. As I turned to leave, she spoke again. He won't last. You know, in prison, men like him, they need to be the architect. Being cog, a number, it breaks them faster than any sentence. A small consolation, I suppose. I didn't look back. Outside, in the bright, normal New York afternoon, I took deep breaths. It was over, truly over. The monster was caged. The machine was dismantled. The money was being turned to medicine and aid. Jake was waiting on a bench nearby. He stood as I approached. Get what you needed? He asked. I got the truth. I said, it's uglier than I imagined. But it's done. I looked at him. I couldn't have done this without you. You saved my life. You saved your own life. He said, his usual gruffness softened. I just provided the tools. What now? Now, I said, looking at the city, at the people walking by, blissfully unaware of the poison that sometimes coursed through the most intimate channels of their lives. I start building something new, something that makes it harder for the next David Wright to succeed. He fell into step beside me. The foundation, that's part of it. There's more. I've been talking to a publisher. I'm writing it all down, not just the salacious details, the financial red flags, the behavioral shifts, the way they isolate you, not with violence, but with paperwork and plausible deniability. I'm calling it the Ledger of Lies. A faint smile touched Jake's lips. Sounds like a bestseller. You'll need security. Victoria's in the wind, but her old clients some might hold grudge. I know, I said. We had reached my new building, a secure, modern tower with a doorman who was actually a former Marine. Liam was upstairs with Claire, doing his homework. A normal, precious evening. Maybe I know a good, paranoid security consultant? Maybe you do. Jake said, he's expensive, though. I can afford it, I said, and for the first time in a long time. The words held no shadow, no double meaning. It was just a statement of fact. I was free, I was alive, and I had work to do. 1 year later, the view from my corner office on the 40th floor was of a New York that glittered with indifferent promise. The brass plaque on the door read, Hannah Wright, the Shield Consultancy. Below, in smaller letters, Financial Forensics, Threat Mitigation. It wasn't the charity board or the gallery committee. It was mine, built from ashes, funded with reclaimed dignity. My phone buzzed at a secure line. It was Jake, his voice a familiar, grounding rasp. The security detail for the Bennett woman is in place. 2-person team, former Secret Service. She's rattled, but she's following the protocol. No contact with the husband. All financials frozen. We're auditing his crypto wallets now. The pattern is familiar. He's a David Wright starter kit, but just sloppier. Good. Send her my regards. And the invoice? I said, a smile in my voice. Jake ran the operational security arm of the Shield. I handled the financial and strategic side. Claire, my CFO and communications director, made sure the world knew our story wasn't just true crime fodder, but a cautionary tale with teeth. Will do. Dinner tonight? Liam wants to show us his robot that can supposedly fetch snacks. It currently just beeps and spins in circles. A prototype. 7 p.m. Don't be late. He's timing the snack retrieval efficiency. I hung up, a warm feeling cutting through the day's usual tension. Liam was thriving. Therapy, a new school, and the unwavering, no bullshit love of his mother and her oddly assembled family, Claire, Jake, and a very protective former FBI agent named Miller who dropped by for Sunday pancakes. He asked about David less and less. The court mandated. Therapist supervised letter David had sent 6 months ago, full of vague, self-pitying platitudes, had been intercepted, read by the therapist, and deemed not in the child's best interest to receive. It was shredded. I'd made sure David knew that. No more access. No more poison. My intercom chimed. Ms. Wright, your 2 p.m. is here. Ms. Alves from the New York Times. Send her in. Isabella Alves was a sharp-eyed journalist in her 50s, the one who'd published my first op-ed piece. From perfect victim to plaintiff. How my husband's ledger almost killed me. It had gone viral, leading to a book deal and a speaking tour that wasn't about trauma porn, but about forensic self-defense. Hannah, she said, shaking my hand firmly, the piece is brilliant. The draft legislation you've outlined with Senator Vance's office. The Intimate Partner Financial Transparency Act, that it's got real teeth. Mandatory disclosure of life insurance policy details between spouses. Independent review of any policy over $5 million. A federal database to flag Black Widow or Black Widower patterns across state lines. You're trying to turn a gothic horror story into boring bureaucracy. It's genius. Bureaucracy is harder to cheat than a person. I said, gesturing for her to sit. David exploited gaps in the system. Love shouldn't require a private investigator and a Geiger counter. The system should have red flags, not just for banks, but for insurers and probate courts. We talked for an hour about the article, the political pushback from the insurance lobby, the stories that were flooding into the Shield's tip line from across the country. As she was leaving, she paused. There's a rumor from a source at Otisville about David. My spine stiffened slightly. What rumor? That he's not adjusting at all. He's in protective custody, but he's unraveling, writing manic, incoherent screeds, claiming it was all a masterpiece the world was too small to understand. The other inmates call him the jeweler. He hates it. I felt nothing. No schadenfreude, no pity, just a distant, clinical note. A masterpiece that got him a life sentence. How poetic. After she left, I spent the afternoon reviewing the Foundation's quarterly report. The Midnight Star Foundation had funded 2 new research fellowships in radiological forensics at Johns Hopkins and had provided legal grants that helped put 3 other Victoria Sloan-esque facilitators out of business. The money was clean now. It was a shield. That evening, in the cozy, book-lined living room of my Brooklyn brownstone, the Tribeca penthouse sold. The proceeds in the foundation. Liam demonstrated his snack bot. It whirred, extended a grabber arm, knocked over a bowl of pretzels, and beeped apologetically. A setback, Liam declared, grinning. The grip-to-weight ratio is off. A critical analysis, Jake said, nodding seriously as he helped pick up pretzels. Back to the lab. The easy affection between them. The way Jake listened to Liam, endless engineering explanations, was a quiet balm I'd never dared hope for. Later, after Liam was in bed, I was in the home office, going through the last of the old boxes from storage. Claire and I had purged most of David's things. But this was a box of my own memorabilia I'd avoided. College yearbooks, old photos. At the bottom, wrapped in faded tissue paper, was a small, leather-bound journal. I didn't recognize it. I opened it. It was David's handwriting, not from recent years. The ink was faded, the script younger. Messier, dates from his early 20s, around the time of Margot. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. The entries were the grandiose, angst-ridden scribbles of a privileged young man, obsessed with his own potential tragedy. Then, an entry from a month before Margot's death. M talks of postponing the wedding, says she needs to find herself before merging lives. Her inheritance is locked until we're married. The indecision is a form of theft. She holds the key to a future and dangles it. The pain of possibly losing her is exquisite. It is the only thing that makes me feel truly alive. To love something so fragile it could break, that is the only real love. Perhaps to break it yourself is the ultimate act of possession, a perfect loss. I turned the page, my heart a cold stone, an entry from the day after her funeral. The grief is a symphony. Everyone sees the conductor's tears. They don't hear the music only I can hear. The music of ownership. I have loved. I have lost. I have the perfect, beautiful pain. And I have the sparkle that caught her neck. A reminder, a note of the symphony, made physical, my masterpiece of feeling. The final entry, years later, a single line, written just before our 10th anniversary. Hannah is the ideal canvas, so full of light. The masterpiece requires a contrast, the slow dimming of a bright star that will be my magnum opus. Then, the perfect, permanent loss, and I will finally be complete. I closed the book. The horror wasn't in the details, that it was in the core. It wasn't just greed. It was a sickness. He didn't just want money. He wanted to be the author of his own tragic opera, to feel like a profound, suffering soul. And he needed to murder to create the set dressing for his ego. We weren't people. We were props. Margot, me. Liam was just a plot device for the third act. I carried the journal to the fireplace. Jake came in, holding 2 glasses of wine. He saw my face, saw the book in my hand. What is it? The author's notes. I said, my voice flat. I didn't tell him the specifics. Some horrors are too grotesque to share. I just opened the glass fireguard and placed the journal on the low-burning logs. The flames licked at the leather, then caught, curling the pages into black petals that glowed orange and vanished into ash. The right place for it, Jake said quietly, handing me a glass. We watched it burn, the last physical remnant of David's fantasy. As the final page dissolved, my phone rang. It was the 24-hour hotline for the Shield. Forwarded to me. I answered. Shield Consultancy. Hannah speaking. A woman's voice. Hushed. Trembling. Laced with a British accent. I was given this number. My friend. She said you helped her. My husband, he gave me a new smartwatch. For our anniversary. It gave me a small shock. Like a static charge. But on purpose. I took it apart. There's a tiny needle. And a reservoir. I don't know what's in it. I'm in Geneva. He's at a conference until tomorrow. I'm so scared. I looked at Jake. He was already reading my face, setting his wine down, pulling out his own phone to get a trace on the call. You did the right thing calling, I said, my voice shifting into the calm, commanding tone I'd honed. Listen carefully. Do not touch the watch again. Put it in a Ziploc bag. Where are you right now? Exact address. As she whispered the details of a lakeside hotel. I gave her instructions to lock the door, call the hotel desk for a specific reason to get a staff member nearby. Do not drink anything from the minibar. Jake was already texting, mobilizing a European counterpart we worked with. We have a partner who can be to you in 90 minutes. I said, you're not alone. This is what we do. We stop them. I hung up and looked at the last embers of the journal in the fireplace. Then I looked at Jake. Geneva. Corporate husband. Likely a pharma exec. Needle in a smartwatch. Probably a fast-acting cardiac toxin. Clean. Deniable. Tech-savvy. The blueprint evolves. Jake's mouth was a grim line. The more things change. You want me to go? I thought of Liam. Asleep upstairs. Safe. I thought of the woman by a Swiss lake, holding a piece of her own death in her trembling hand. I thought of the ledger I'd vowed to rebalance, not just for myself, but for all the others. We'll both go, I said, my voice clear and certain. I was no longer Hannah, the potential victim. I was Hannah Wright, of the Shield, the Fortress. Book the flights. Let's go catch another one.